Welcome to Imperfect Momming. Our children are constantly looking to us for examples. The term role model doesn't quite cut it here. We are shaping their worldview with every move we make. You see, it's not in the lectures we give or moments where we are actively attempting to teach them. It's in the micro movements we make, the unconscious ways in which we navigate life. We are constantly teaching our children how to show up for themselves, their friends, their future partners, and even their future children. So what can we do to ensure we are raising thoughtful, compassionate, self-aware human beings? We have to become them ourselves. No one is perfect, but we can still all be better, and it starts with self-healing. Let's get to it. Welcome back to Imperfect Momming, and we have a very special guest today. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Chanlyn Imler. I am a newborn care specialist and an international pediatric sleep coach.
Very cool. So what does that entail? Like, what is it that you do?
Well, as a newborn care specialist, I'm signed on in the very beginning stages, pretty much right when the parents come home from the hospitals. I work with mom to support them during the 4th trimester. And then as a pediatric sleep coach, I'm allowed to integrate some sleep foundation training in that 4th trimester and also help parents of older infants and toddlers as well, instead of just in those first 12 weeks.
So you help kind of get a sleep schedule down in the newborn time period?
Yes, it's really about working with mom and dad and finding a routine that works for them and helping them, feel confident and building upon that. We all thrive on a routine, and newborns do the exact same thing. And I think just the word can be so intimidating. So it's really helping mom and dad understand that this can be as simple as, just a nightly bath or, making sure the baby is fed every 2 to 3 hours.
Gotcha. Yeah, that I would say that routine is a scary word for people. And being consistent with that routine, like not only creating one, but being consistent, but also being flexible is probably pretty important as well.
Yes, it is. It's so important. But, really, it's just about taking it one day at a time. We can't predict the future, and your child is not going to be the same. So, taking it one day at a time. And when there's a hiccup, it's just understanding that these things happen and to keep progressing forward. So that's really what my part is. I'm just kind of like that support person, guiding and supporting the parents and giving them knowledge along the way.
So what is it that got you started on this path?
I think I have always had a very natural maternal instinct when it comes to children, and also parents in general, being able to understand them and help them understand their children. I was very hands-on with my younger brothers growing up. I was kind of, even though I was the older sister, I was still kind of more maternal instinct with them as well. And it just kind of put me on this career path of working with children. And from there, there's a wide range of fields you can do with working with children. I really kind of narrowed down working one-on-one with parents as an overnight nanny caretaker, to a daytime nanny, to a travel nanny, to more, once COVID happened, to pulling away from the hands-on and becoming more remote. And that's when I really started to focus more on the sleep aspect.
Got it. What would you say? Would you say that sleep is the number one struggle, or a routine is the number one struggle that new parents have? Or is it that plus something else?
Well, sleep is just one function. And I think it's really always important to understand that it's just one function to your child's well-being. So if they're being constantly fed every 2 to 3 hours in a 24-hour period, then, that's a reason why they're not sleeping so long, because they're hungry. If they have any GI issues, any tummy issues, that's why they're not sleeping very well, because they're uncomfortable. They're looking for support. So it's really helping parents understand that there's a reason why your child is having difficulty sleeping. And it could be something as easy as they're not sure on the expectation around sleep, Or it could be something more internal where it's more GI issues, their tummy issues. Maybe they have oral restrictions that causes a lot of restless sleeping. It could be, that they have other things going on. So it's focusing on all the functions around their child and not just sleep as one individual component.
Mm-hmm. I know that I know a mom that had postpartum anxiety, and the way that that manifested was by hyper focusing on her son's sleep schedule. And it was like, no, this is going to be your schedule and this is how we're going to do it. And like, this is when you nap, there's no flexibility, and that was why I kind of added that flexibility. Now, postpartum anxiety is not something that's in our control. And it's also not something that's talked about a whole lot.
No, it's not. It's definitely not. I definitely coming into the fourth trimester with so many parents. You see so many moms, especially if they didn't have a lot of children influence growing up, or they didn't have friends that had children. They were so excited to have their child. Of course, they love their child, but the concept of the day to day can just be so overwhelming on their mental health. And it really takes a deterioration. So it's really kind of, understanding that there are aspects that you can control, and it's good to focus on that. But at the same time, your child's going to have their own rhythm, and the control comes to following that and understanding that. So instead of putting them in a mold and become frustrated when they're falling out of that, it's like understanding, okay, so I'm going to follow my child's rhythm, and that's what I can control, and that's what's going to happen. So yes, the true sleep success comes from when you follow your child's patterns and routine. And a lot of that comes from, being able to look back around, like a week span of logging, which is so important. And you can kind of see, okay, around this time, my child gets sleepy, and around this time he wants to wake up. So that's your child telling you, I'm sleepy at this time and I'm ready to play at this time. So instead of trying to focus so much on one situation, it's looking at the whole introspect itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm just thinking about, while you're talking, I'm thinking about like, well, what did I do? Because I have, my son's 10. So it's been 10 years since I've, had any of these issues. But I think I was just blessed because I had the support system that you're talking about, the friends with kids, and I knew nothing about children because I avoided them like the plague for 10 years by the time I had my son. And so it's, I had people that I trusted that I could go to for advice. I wasn't big on reading at that point, so I didn't like read what to expect in the first year or what to expect when I didn't read any parenting books probably until my son was 6. And, but I drew from the people around me, and I was also self-employed. So I was able to kind of follow his rhythm, and basically I would just work when he slept. And so then that ended up being our routine. But it's funny when you're saying, log it for a week. I'm like, I never did that. I wouldn't have ever even thought of doing that. And yet it's kind of what just happened because, for a while I did, the whole sleep when he's sleeping thing, which is not always realistic for moms. But
I wish people would stop telling moms that, because it's just, they're like, well, when do I sleep? When do I sleep? When he sleeps then? Because he doesn't sleep.
Yeah. So what, if you could erase that from the English language, what would you replace it with?
I would say rest when you can. Rest is the best form. Your body doesn't always need to sleep. It's same when you're pregnant, you're tired, but you can't find that sleep. So you're just resting. And that's still just as important for your body. So when your child's having, when we're eating, you're able to rest. When they're sleeping, or even just playing on the floor and doing tummy time, you don't have to be up and doing something. You can sit next to them and you can engage with them, and you're still getting that rest yourself. So, it's finding the quiet moments when you can. And if sleep is able to become part of that, great. But otherwise, don't spend your whole day trying to figure out when you're going to sleep, because it's a mind game. It's not always going to happen.
Yeah.
Especially in the first 4 weeks. You're bringing home a stranger, and you're both strangers to each other, and you're trying to figure out a feeding routine and just social skills, and just trying to integrate this new little person into your relationship even. So it's just, rest and find the quiet moments when you can.
I always thought it was so interesting that there's so much prenatal care. There's so much structure for while you have a baby in utero. And then it's like, okay, have fun. Figure it out. See you later. Isn't that interesting?
It really is. And I've done doula shifts at a hospital before where I'm hired to stay with the parents, because especially in COVID, they couldn't have both parents there at the same time. So they bring in a professional. And, you see in the hospital, these nurses are constantly telling the mom to feed the baby, feed the baby, feed the baby, anytime he or she is crying. And then they get home and they're doing that same pattern, but it's exhausting and it's draining. And they're not given the information of when that no longer is needed. Like, yes, they're going to cluster feed. Yes, they're going to need a lot of feeds, but every time your child cries, he's not looking for food. He could be looking for something else. And it's crazy to me that there is so much prenatal care, and there's so many, before you have the baby classes, but then once you have the baby, there's barely any classes. Yeah. You're just kind of handed this baby, put in the car seat, and off you go. And then you have a checkup in 2 weeks, and then that's really it.
Yeah. And it's, you said it earlier that it's a stranger. It's this new entity, this new being, this new human into your relationship. And could you imagine if you had, just a full adult just come and move into your house with no warning, no introduction, not just like, here's this new person in your house, like that, there would be an adjustment period. And I think there's even a lot of guilt that comes from, like, I don't know what's going on in the first 2 weeks. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. And, you were talking about cluster feeding, and I would imagine that it would be different for breastfeeding as opposed to formula feeding. Like, from what I remember, formula, is more dense. And so it actually sits in their stomach longer than breast milk does. So they're not going to be hungry necessarily every 2 to 3 hours with a formula than like they would with breast milk.
Yes, no, that's very true. But I think it's also important to understand that all babies are born with about the same stomach size. So for those first 4 weeks, their stomach is no bigger than a small egg. So they're only able to take in maybe that 1 ounce, maybe that 2 ounce. And, if the mom is feeling stressed, if anything's going on with her internally, that's going to affect her production of milk. So a lot of parents immediately jump to formula. So there's a ton of this unknown mystery when you bring home this baby. And, I've seen it happen with so many of my clients. They reach out to their pediatrician, they're looking for advice, they're looking for help. And, they just go through like, well, is he eating? Is she pooping? Great. Sounds all good to me. And then these parents are just left in this confusion of, okay, am I doing this right? Am I doing this wrong? What is happening? And it's really a sad thing that's happening all around the world, is we're leaving these new moms to kind of figure out things on their own, and they're not being supported. They're really not.
Which kind of goes to back to the concept of, I talk about this a lot on the podcast, but it takes a village to raise a child. Like that what I was describing with my son, that was my village. I wasn't doing it alone. My son's dad was actually deployed at the time, so I was literally alone, and I never felt like I was doing it alone, because I had my mom and I had a few really good friends that were moms that were generous with advice, and I know that sometimes there's a lot of resistance to receiving advice from other moms or from other people when you're not asking for it. But it's, the beautiful thing about advice is you don't have to take it. You can listen and check in with your own intuition. And how does this feel? Does that feel aligned with what my beliefs are, with what feels good to me? You can try some things, and if it doesn't feel good to you, then do something different, right? And it doesn't have to be this thing where I have to do exactly what that person did or do the opposite of what that person did, just because they're the ones giving me the advice.
Yes, that's so true. I mean, you have to do what's best for your household. And I think following your intuition is always going to be the best gift I can help a mother understand. Because even, recently, every day I have clients texting me and asking me what to do. And I'm just like, how do you feel? Like, your pediatrician is telling you this, but what do you feel it could be? And, go with that gut, push for a referral, push for a specialist. Push for what you are feeling, because you aren't feeling okay inside. That means something is wrong. So yes, I mean, it's all about following intuition. Support can be so great, but also there can be a lot of negative support. So, especially when you have a new baby, everyone wants to hold the new baby and wants to support the new baby, but they're not actually being helpful. They're more just people in the house that you're having to entertain or feed or clean after. So I think there's always just like this mix of combination of, okay, I want support, but how do I get that good support? Mm-hmm. So I think, even though I'm a specialist, when I have new moms come to me or I have friends ask me how things are going, I would love to give my opinion, but I know that they can ask me. So I just kind of step back and let them vent to me and let them, tell them at the end of the day, I'm sorry, like, that's rough. I'm really sorry you're going through that. And then, if they're like, well, I really could use the help, I always ask, well, what can I do to help you? Sometimes moms just want to vent and they don't want the advice. They don't want, the other parent's perspective on things, because it probably doesn't align with their morals and what they're feeling. And then you're just in this hostile situation.
Yeah, that's a really good point, that, not always we don't always need advice. We sometimes just need to get it out of our body and get it out of our brain, and just have someone listen. And then if that doesn't feel complete, then say, well, what do you think about all of that?
Yes, I think a lot of mom support groups, sometimes you have that mix of the moms just coming together to vent about how their life is going. And, there's nothing wrong with complaining. You don't need to feel guilt for complaining because you want a child. Now you have them, but you're overwhelmed. I mean, that's just normal. We're humans. We're going to feel emotions, especially once you have a baby. Your hormones are just all over the place. And then there are moms that are looking for that support and looking for that advice. So it's kind of just like taking a step back, reading the room and understanding, okay, what are you wanting out of this situation? Because a lot of the times new moms, they just want a place to vent. They just want an ear to be able to hear them and people to be like, okay, I'm here for you in this way.
And a judgment-free zone. I think that
yes.
a lot of moms don't speak up because they're afraid of that judgment. And that sets into motion a pattern that's just all bad. If you can't ever, talk about the things that you feel concerned about because you're afraid of that external judgment, then I think it all just gets bottled up inside.
Of course, the mom parent shaming in general is just something that's always so terrible. And even in my profession, of course, I have the rules that I have to follow, but I'm still going to support my clients at the end of the day and make sure that things are just being done in a safe manner, whether it needs to be done or not. So there's always going to be that right or wrong, but there should never be shaming. Parents are already feeling so much. They just need support.
Yeah. Absolutely. Is there a piece of advice that you want to give to our listeners?
Oh, yes. Babies are hard. They are hard and they are complex. And if your child is not sleeping, it has nothing to do with your parenting. They just need a little bit more of a setup to understand the expectation of sleeping. You basically have to teach them how to sleep. And yes, I know this goes against so many people being like, oh, it's a biological normal function. And it is. So is, swimming, but we still have to be taught how to do it. And your child is no different. So give it time, give it understanding, take one thing on at a day, and then go with your goal. I really look at routines as, accomplishment to a specific goal. So if your goal is to get them in bed by 7 p.m., make a routine and try to make that happen. And then if they fall asleep for 5 minutes, give yourself a pat on the back and know, okay, tomorrow I'm going to aim for 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be immediately 10 hours of sleeping through the night. Start small. Give yourself, applauses in the middle of it, because it's hard and it's going to continue to be hard for, probably the next 18 years and more.
There's always going to be those challenges. As soon as you think you've got it nailed down, there's going to be something else that pops up.
Yes. I mean, the first year, there are so many leaps and there are monthly regressions, and then you have teething, and then you have environmental changes, moms going back to work that need to put their child in daycare. There are constant changes, and there's always going to be something. So try not to let those things become excuses stopping you from wanting to fix them, but, take them on one day at a time.
And it's interesting when this thought popped into my head when you said, create a routine and teach them when you want them to fall asleep, essentially. For the first 10 months, lunar months of their existence, they've been 100% completely dependent on you and your schedule. So they eat when you eat, and they're sleeping theoretically when you're sleeping, or they're just kind of left to their own devices with sleeping inside, because there's times when they're active and there's times when they're not, but we don't have any control over that, and there's not necessarily a routine unless you're in a routine, but I don't know about you, my days are never the same.
No, my days are never the same. I think lately they've been more the same. But yes, I mean, it's very funny you say that, they've been following your routine, and that's actually very true. But I know there have been recent studies and everything showing that the more active you are in your pregnancy, your baby's sleeping a lot more during the daytime because you're constantly moving. They're being rocked to sleep. They're being, all of these things. And then come nighttime, when you're ready to sleep and you're ready to be calm, your baby's the most active. And it's interesting when I talk to my clients and, I ask them, what was your pregnancy like? Were you active? Were you kind of, in between? They're like, oh, well, I was always busy. And then at night, I never could sleep because he or she was constantly moving. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, yep. And then you kind of realize once they're born, that pattern kind of still sticks. There's still, that's where day and night confusion usually originates from in the very early weeks. So it's, they've been following your routine from the very beginning. So it's no different once they're born. They still need that help. They still need that guidance and that structure.
I wonder if that's why I had such good luck with my son, because from 30 weeks on, I was put on bed rest. So I wasn't active during the day. So he wasn't constantly being rocked to sleep. So he had more of a normal schedule where he would just wake up when he was hungry and go back to sleep after I fed him. And then after 6 months, I switched to formula. And then I got to sleep through the night because his dad was a night owl. And so I'd be in bed by 9 or 10, and his dad would wake up or be awake at 1 or 2 in the morning, and he would feed him, and that would be their time. And it was really cool. And anyway, but
no, it's very true. I mean, of course, to understand that, there would have to be a lot more systematic studies and pregnant people comparing that. But it is very true. And yes, that's great that your husband was able to help you. I think that so many moms are just so alone in this journey. Even if they have a partner, they still feel so alone. So my number one advice actually would be don't be afraid to ask your partner to help you. It should be 50-50. You've done all of the work for 10 months. Now it's their turn.
Yeah. and work out a system where like you may not know what it is that you need, but kind of like play off of what his strengths are. Like if he's not so great with the baby necessarily, maybe he could clean around the house or empty the dishwasher or do some laundry. Like, and I know there's a lot of moms that have the control issues of like, he doesn't do it right. Let that go. Let him just do it, because then that means you're not having to do it.
Yes. I actually just taught a class a couple of weeks ago through the Kinedu app. I'm one of their coaches. And, we talked about this, like how to have your partner be involved. And I'm the same, like I'm very much a control freak. And, I watch my husband load the dishwasher, and in my head, I'm like, nope, that's nope, none of that's going to fit if you load it like that. And I have to like completely step back and be like, okay, the dishes are still going to be cleaned. Maybe they'll need like a little bit of a rinse down once they come out, but they're still going to be cleaned. And, it's kind of picking and choosing your battles, but we do so much every day that, our partners don't notice that we do, because we're in our head like, oh, this has to be cleaned up. Oh, this has to be paid. That has to be done. Groceries need to be loaded. We don't have any food. So it's a really great technique that once you're pregnant and you're starting to hit closer to your due date, to start writing down all of these things that you do. Because then when your husband's like, how can I help you? You can be like, you know what? I have to feed the baby, but can you tackle some of these chores that need to be done? And also when you have people come over and they're like, how can I help you? Instead of them taking over the baby or, trying to become more of a person for you to take care of, give them your list. Tell them, you know what? I would love it if you could help me with the laundry. I would love it if you go to Trader Joe's and get me some groceries. This is our list. So, there are other ways for your husband to help you, because they're just as scared as you are with the baby. There's this like new crying thing, and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to break it. And at the end of the day, maybe you're going to be a little bit better with them, but, let your still give your husband chances to learn, still give your partner chances, and opportunities to strengthen that. But if you don't feel comfortable, don't put yourself in that situation. Have them do something else. Have them sanitize your breast pumping parts, or sanitize the bottles. Have them wipe down the floors. Take your pets for a walk. There are lots of other ways that they can support you, and they should be.
That's such a good idea, like writing down your routine and having it available for someone. How can I help you? Because that's probably one of the most overwhelming questions that you can get as a new mom. It's like, I have no idea unless I'm, sat down and thought about it and was intentional about what it is that I do. That was another thing that I had when my son was born. We had all of our husbands were deployed. So all the wives that were behind, when there was like 4 of us, I think, that had a baby while the guys were deployed. And wow. So they had a meal train, whereas like every day somebody would bring you a meal, and it was amazing. I never had to think about cooking anything. And and my sister stayed with me too, so I wasn't 100% alone, but she had school, and so she was gone 9 to 5 and came home at 6. She would hold my son for an hour, and I would just go take a shower and wander around the house. And like, I don't even know that I cleaned anything. I didn't have any kind of routine. I was just like, this is an hour that I get to be me, and I get to exist as who I used to be, not just I'm mom now 24/7. And I think that was a saving grace for my sanity, that I had this 1 hour was really all that I needed. I just needed a little break.
That's amazing. Yes. I mean, you're being a mom is part of who you are now, but it's not your identity. You're still yourself. And it's really important that when you find those moments where your child's sleeping or someone else is taking care of the baby, don't go and do chores. Don't go and do laundry. Take that time for yourself, because, you have to fill your cup up. You have to fill yourself up, and you have to give yourself that. And yes, when we are so tired and we are so exhausted, our brain is not thinking properly. So when someone's like, oh, how can I help you? You're like, you kind of freeze, and then they leave and you're like, oh my gosh, I could have had all of this done if I could have just known. So yes, have a visual aid of things that you do. And I love the idea of a meal service. I think that's an amazing gift you can give a new family that has a baby, because hire them a meal service, give them a month of food. Things like that is such a great gift, instead of, coming over with like blankets, stuffed animals. Yes, those are great, but food is really going to be the best gift. Maybe a delivery service. We're like, hey, can I order you groceries to be delivered today? Would that be helpful for you? Yes, it always will be.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so, and like, because of COVID, like we have so many more things at our disposal that literally don't take a lot of our time. We're all kind of busy people. And especially if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably a mom, like we're busy, but it doesn't take a lot of time to, go on to, Save Mart website or whatever your grocery store is, and order 2 or 3 things and have it, and either pick it up or have it delivered. It's really, those things didn't exist 10 years ago. Like, take advantage of them now. And, and what you have strengths, if you want to support a new mom in your life, what are your strengths? And, if you're a great cook, go make them a meal and bring it to them. And if you like to shop, go shopping for them, whatever the case may be. But you as the new mom, create that support system for yourself. That support systems don't just show up. For the most part, we have to cultivate them and grow them. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. No, there's definitely so many ways that you can support new parents without actually having to be there, especially in this like technology world. You can be halfway across the country and still order your friends food for dinner, or you can, hey, I know that that's your favorite restaurant. Would you like some dinner from them tonight? Or just surprise them. No one's going to be upset if food shows up at their door. They're going to be so appreciative for it.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. What is there a book that's been instrumental in your personal development growth?
My first sleep training book that I ever was given by a really close mom friend, and it's Healthy Sleep Habits, Happy Child. And it was really defining moment to me. It's all about the Ferber method, which I don't really lean towards anymore, but it started everything for me. And it was very informative. And it was all about, how babies have biological sleep functions and they have homeostatic sleep drives. And, it's a lot of this information that we're not just taught on the day to day. A lot of these days, I love the Baby Wise series 1, 2, and 3 for toddlers, and there are so many books out there. And I think a lot of parents become a little bit obsessed with the books and the Google guides and all of these things. So, you can take all of these books, but take them with a grain of salt and apply different things to your child. Your child might not be exactly one way. They might need a modification of different things. But yes, that was my first book that I started with, and it kind of put me on this journey.
Yeah, it's, and that taking the book with the grain of salt, it's just like the advice that you get from people is like, does it feel in alignment with you? Do you not know? Then try it and see how that feels. If it makes you feel uncomfortable that you're doing this, like you said, you don't lean towards the Ferber method anymore, but it was a jumping off place for you. Like, there's nothing wrong with, these books just being a guide. They don't have to be your Google map. They could just be a map that you're looking at and a guide that, kind of takes you along your way.
Yes, they're like, the stops on your way to your final destination. That's exactly what they really are. And yes, I mean, I've learned so many different methods in my 13 years of working with parents, and the babies are going to tell me what's going to work best for them, and the parents too. Some can handle the Ferber, some can handle, just being left alone because that's just what their temperament needs. And some need that, that emotional availability from their parents. So Yeah, there's stops on the way to your final destination. So take them, indulge them, read them, learn from them, but apply them gradually to your child.
Yeah. Very, very good. Where can our listeners find you?
Yes, well, you can find me on Instagram at Sound Sleep, the number 4 Bubbies. And you can also find my Facebook group, Sound Sleep for Bubbies. And I also have a website, soundsleepforbubbies.com.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for joining me today and pouring into our guests and for this wonderful conversation. And I appreciate you being here.
Yes, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure speaking with you. And I hope everyone has a great day.
Awesome. So we'll have another episode of Imperfect Momming for you next week. And until then, keep healing. Bye, guys.
Thank you for tuning in to Imperfect Momming. It's time for us to step up and realize that our power is not in trying to shape our children. Our power lies in shaping ourselves into the people we want our children to model themselves after. Don't just do it for your kids. Do it for yourself. When you become a more self-aware, compassionate, and confident person, you and everyone around you benefit. For more information about me and my work, visit AlysiaLyons.com. That's AlysiaLyons.com. See you next time.